Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Ahsan, and I am so excited to moderate this very special Q&A being held for the film I'd Rather Be Dead Than Silent, directed by Tina Mascara, featuring our beloved Grace Song and Dr. Khaled Abou El Fadl. I hope you've seen the film, and if you have not, your access will expire on March 4th, 1 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you're in North America, please watch it by Tuesday night. If you haven't seen the film, the very short synopsis is this film follows Grace and the Sheikh as America is at a kind of inflection point, one of many, apparently, but beginning with Trump's rise, and it tells a much longer story of Islamophobia and Wahhabism while being an extraordinarily intimate portrait of this power couple that we've longed to love, taking on the mission of rightfully claiming Islam's humanistic values and proclaiming a way forward through hate and ignorance. A very important and timely film. I want to explain how we'll be running this Q&A a little bit. So we've got some great questions in advance that I'll be going through. I'll also be adding some questions myself. And Sarah will be combing through the comments to find questions that come to us live. So please put your questions in the chat and we'll hope to weave them in. And another note, I know this event was initially listed for 2 hours, but it'll actually be 90 minutes so that we're not conflicting with Breaking Fast and Maghrib. So with all that said, let's get started. I want to welcome Tina, Grace, and the Sheikh. And I want to start with a question for Tina. So as far as I remember, I believe your motivation for making this film, Tina, was starting with wanting to tell a story about someone who was a Muslim. And, at a time when, Muslims were demonized, and I say this like it's some quaint past moment. But a lot has happened since when you first began this project, whether in the world at large and also personally. So in seeing this project through, has your motivation shifted or changed in any way? Do you have new reasons or resolve, whether personal or political, for this project?
Well, what's interesting to me is still, we started making this film after Trump was elected the first time. And, he put forth the Muslim ban. And so my partner and I, who has passed away, we started exploring themes of Islamophobia, and that led us to meet the professor and Grace. And so and so we were brought into a world, and I just learned, so much about how public discourse, is so not nuanced. And I don't think it's gotten really better. I think people don't listen, so I think it's the conversations are still the same. And I've watched the film recently. I just feel it's so timely to everything that's going on, even though it was made, now a year ago.
Yeah. So I want to ask a similar question to Grace and the Sheikh. Um, so much has happened since the filming, just with regard to COVID, the founding of the Usuli Institute, the move to Ohio, the Tafsir project, the conferences, and now the Sira. And I'll say for me personally, the thing haunting the film for me is the specter of the genocide in Gaza. So what I want to ask, what thoughts or feelings come up for you revisiting the time captured in the film?
Sheikh, do you want to answer?
Um, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, just with so much time, so many world events, the genocide in Gaza, but also the Usuli formation happening after the film, in the future of the film. Looking back at that time, what thoughts or feelings come up, given the hindsight of what transpired after the film?
I mean, that's a really tough question. Tina and Guido, practically lived with us for a period of time, for quite a time. I mean, there were hours and hours filmed, many, many hours. And when I think back at the amount of discussions about ideas, and the central theme was humanistic ideas, and what humanism is essentially about. And this all was before the Gaza genocide, and this was all uh, before the now unfolding slaughter in Iran. Uh, and the most important thing is that I don't think of this film as about me or Grace or um, it, it is fundamentally and essentially about the dynamics that justify and legitimate the slaughter of Muslims and the dehumanization of Muslims. What I've called in another context the narco-politics of Muslims, the narco-politics where Muslims are assumed to be dead before they are killed. And so, I mean, as we talk, um, Israel and the United States bombed an Iranian school for girls, and some estimates are as high as 100 Iranian schoolgirls killed. This would give serious pause if Russia did this in Ukraine, killing 100 schoolgirls in one instant. It would give the
I
entire.
was in the other room trying to find my pants. Your AirPods are charging fine, huh?
Hang on. What?
Sorry, someone was unmuted, but they're muted again. Please continue.
So, I mean, if this would happen with any population I am aware of in the world, this is the one thing that really, uh, uh, um, this is the one thing that became underscored in my entire involvement in 30 years or 40 years in the human rights field, is that there is a conspiratorial silence about the narco politics that surround Muslims, that it really, in every sense of the word, uh, Muslim life doesn't carry much value. Um, I mean, again, to the extent that the United States can put pressure on Pakistan just yesterday, and Pakistan can oblige the United States by bombing Afghanistan. And no one has even paused for an instant to think about how many Afghani lives were lost. The entire world, most places didn't even report the slaughter that ensued on behalf of the United States by the Pakistani military, and simply because the Taliban said, if the US bombs Iran, we stand by Iran. Apparently, for that, they deserved a mass slaughter. So, I mean, I agree with Tina that this film is more relevant now than ever, uh, because the systematic and structural problems that feed into Islamophobia remain, uh, and in fact are stronger than ever. I am. I have to admit that I am frustrated that um, uh, it's rather extremely telling that the world doesn't see even a narrative like this told by this film. Um, the world doesn't respond to it like it should. The dehumanization of Muslims is um, a world problem. The difference is that Muslims themselves, for the most part, are oblivious to it. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
Grace.
I think, I mean, when we started the film, I think we always had a feeling of isolation, right? And when we met Tina and Guido, it was exciting because, to see two very beautiful people get very excited about what we were doing, like they got what we were doing. Um, and that's not even necessarily a reaction that Muslims have, right? So on the one hand, I mean, there's so many different reasons why this film is important. At the global level, the humanization of Muslims, but also within our own community, having people understand, you know, the importance of knowledge. What we're doing, what we're doing is so unusual. I mean, we're clearly a very abnormal, maybe in in a good sense of the word, but what we're doing is not usual, and it's unique and it's interesting and it's special. But it's also within our own community, not something that is particularly welcomed, right? I mean, for me personally, as a convert, I've always, and as a convert who doesn't wear a scarf, um, I always felt really passionately about trying to present a face of Islam that is unexpected, but also normal and relatable. And that's a lot of the feedback that we've heard is that, Sheikh is the scholar, he's, the giant intellectual, figure, but I'm sort of the bridge through this like relatable personality that, okay, she seems nice and, I could be friends with her. And I think that that is a very important combination um, that helps like make what we're doing also more relevant. And so now in the time that we live in, where we've advanced in terms of Islamophobia, we still really radically need to humanize this faith, but we also have a lot of allies that we didn't have before through Gaza and all the good people, and they're looking for people that I think that they can relate to and feel like, okay, I share something with them, and I see now the lies about Muslims that are coming out. So that's also very exciting. It's hopeful. So yeah, I feel like this movie is very timely, um, and hopefully, I mean, I wish more people were interested. I wish more people felt there was something here to explore. But I also always trust that God will get it to the people that need to see it, because like our experience with Usuli, when we started the Usuli Institute very shortly after we stopped the filming, um, we had no idea what we were trying to do. And then, fast forward, I can't believe it's been 7 or 8 years now, I think, and we've completed the Quran. We're working on the Sirah. That has really, kind of anchored what our contribution is. Like it's really clarified for me, like what our role is in this time, especially since there aren't many spaces where people feel um, so touched, right? It's like the experience you come when you find Usuli is very different than any other Muslim space, and I'm really proud of that. But I feel it is that combination that we bring, which is, the critical thinking, the depth of knowledge, but then also the very human personability. That's normal. Like it's okay to be normal, right? And in fact, you should be normal. In fact, you should be inspiring as a Muslim. And I hope that that's what this film starts to convey.
Yeah, beautifully said. There's so much in those two answers. I want to go to a question that kind of gets at the Islamophobia piece a little bit. Later, there's going to be a question that also addresses one of Sheikh's hypotheses for what Islamophobia is rooted in. But this was a very interesting question to me. The person says, English is not my first language, which always impresses me because then they speak better in this language than I do in any other language. So this person says, when looking at the state of Islam in Afghanistan or Wahhabi Islam plaguing the Muslim world, how to define, navigate correctly the meaning of the word Islamophobia when some people are rightfully repulsed by some things attributed to Islam, not what we believe Islam is, but what it has kind of commonly been known for.
I mean, um, I mean, I understand it is complicated. And this is something I've talked about in so many of so much of my work. I mean, I've uh, from even the article I published in the volume called Progressive Muslims to the Great Theft talks about it, and Reasoning with God talks about it. Anyway, but um, the 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 dynamics of Islamophobia, we have to understand something about these dynamics themselves. Islam, in there is no question that quite often ugly deeds are committed in the name of Islam, and deeds that are um, jarring. I mean, I remember in Reasoning with God, I talk about uh, an incident where schoolgirls in Saudi Arabia died in a fire because the guards would not let them out of the school without their hijabs, right? So events like this are shocking, they're jarring, they're horrible. But what you realize if you're a student of history that such events transpire with every culture in the world, and that there is no culture uh, that doesn't generate shares of beauty and shares of ugliness. What Islamophobia has done is it continued a historical legacy of constant, unwavering sense of dread about the Islamic phenomena in large, and associating attributes to Islamicity that are um, that are profoundly um, dehumanizing. That, for instance, that Muslims are sexually driven. Muslims are irrational. Muslims are despotic. I mean, and we find that these types of associations go deep into history, go from the first time that Muslims are described as Moors and as Saracens and as Turks and as Mohammedans, and that there's a long history where Europe tries to define itself, the white people try to define themselves as whatever the opposite of Muslim is. So they attribute whatever characteristic they don't like to Muslim, and then they define themselves as we are the opposite, we are different. And in this process of self-definition, they actively search for what is ugly in Muslim culture and emphasize the ugly and generalize the ugly and stereotype the ugly. So they might have both transpire at the same time an act of beauty and an act of ugliness. The act of beauty is largely ignored or justified away. It quite often individualized, quite often, oh, well, yeah, there is something beautiful here, but this is because of the the person involved. Oh, but this is because of the influence of Jewish culture. Oh, this is because of trade with India. Oh, the things, the excuses go on ad nauseum, endless. But then whatever ugly happened becomes an attribute that is generalized to Muslims at large in a timeless, near, uh, truly in a way of fantastic thinking. It's Muslims are just like this, beyond time, beyond causality, beyond it just they are what they are. Now, but the point that I have, I mean, when you're an academic and you are teaching the same thing over and over and over and saying the same thing, it weariness starts coming, starts setting into your soul. And the weariness has to do with this point, is that this is not, since colonialism, since the age of colonialism, the colonialism has been extremely effective in demolishing and obliterating indigenous cultures. Where colonialism has gone, it has destroyed languages, it has destroyed normative beliefs, it has destroyed traditions, it has destroyed histories. Colonialism is literally a ruthless machine that exports whiteism, but whiteism remains an illusory goal, because it sets whiteism as the standard, but the natives can never become white. They can only attempt to do white passing acts, but they will never get there. It's an endless race that you will never win, and you will never get to the end. And you try your best to join that exclusive club, and you might win the right to admittance on events, but you will never belong when all is said and done. Now, the thing is, colonialism was not able to obliterate Muslim culture. Islam is not the only for act of or the only source of resistance, is not, but it was the most pervasive and the strongest because of the size of Muslims in the world. I mean, Hindus retained a lot of their cultures. Buddhists retained a lot of their cultures. There are pockets, but not at the scale and the potentiality that Islam did. I mean, think of what China needed to do to rise as a superpower. It abandoned a lot of its Buddhist culture in order to become China. Think of Taiwan. It became Christianized and whiteized, if you will, in order to become Taiwan. That what this has led to, or the result of this, is precisely the genociding of Palestinians, the uh, the the what we regularly witness in Kashmir, what we've witnessed in Myanmar, what we've witnessed with the Uyghur Muslims, uh, uh, the uh, the genocide that we all witness and were absolutely silent about, that took place in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it blows my mind that the cost of the US invasion of Afghanistan is estimated by the UN at over 1 million people. And this doesn't include children that died from the economic boycott before the actual invasion. We are not, and this doesn't include the first war with the first Bush. This is just the actual. It blows my mind that every inquiry at war crimes committed by American soldiers or Canadian soldiers or British soldiers in Kuwait, in Iraq or Afghanistan, and we're talking about war crimes that included sexual assault, that included summary executions, that included throwing civilians off a cliff, that included horrible, horrific things. But every inquiry was blocked in the International Criminal Court. And although human rights organizations have documented tons of these war crimes by doing underground interviews, by talking to survivors, by talking to relatives to survivors, and the record is massive and shocking. Yet, when you talk about the US and the invasion of Iraq, these criminal acts, these shocking acts do not come to mind. The United States goes around as if it has done nothing. And my point is that all of this is because of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is not some benign hatred that is a mere misunderstanding that can be overcome by people learning, by reading a book about the right type of Islam. Islamophobia is a pernicious type of hatred. It is a lethal type of hatred. It is like fascism or Nazism or KKK white nationalism. The victims of Islamophobia are in the millions, and they continue. Because at the time we filmed this documentary, what happened in Gaza, I mean, how else? You have, and this again from human rights work, I know the number of Palestinian children that the UN has documented had bullets in their head. We are talking about toddlers. And they are dead, and they're dead because there's a bullet in their head. And when you are talking about these individuals, white people in authority look at you as if you're not talking about human beings, as if, like, yeah, bad things happen at war. And you know from experience that if they were not Muslim, you would get a very different reaction. That is what I'm talking about. That's so. Yes, you're right. There are bad things that Muslims do, but you have to understand what Islamophobia is. Because a lot of Muslims, one of the things that really drive me crazy are these naive Muslims who think that, oh, Islamophobia is just about giving white people a better education about Islam. It's just about us, having them read the right book. If they knew what Islam was really about, everything would be better. No. Islamophobia is a historical, demonic, evil force that has been around for centuries and it has never done anything good. We forget that Islamophobia, we forget this. Islamophobia cleansed in the most brutal way the Muslims of Andalusia. You think Muslims who lived in this area in Spain and Portugal and Crete and Cyprus for 600 years and left the marvels that we all witness when we go to Spain and we see what they live, and they're completely eradicated, up down to the last human being. Imagine the violence that is needed to achieve that result. And imagine the amount of hate and sheer cruelty that is needed to achieve this result. And yet, when you visit sites in Muslim Spain, it's very different than if you visit Auschwitz in Germany. Auschwitz in Germany, you feel the spirit is that the Germans are saying, we're ashamed, we're sorry, every minute of the day. We're ashamed, we're sorry, we're ashamed, we're sorry. when you visit the same in Muslim Spain, it's as if you're going on a joy trip. There is nowhere ashamed or we're sorry. You've genocided hundreds of thousands of people, which, if you take pro rata of population numbers at the time, would be equal to millions of people in our day and age. And you tortured and you tormented, and it is well documented that you sexually assault, that rapes of Muslims at the time was in. There's a whole genre of literature about Muslim women impregnated by Christian men through these rapes, and and that is what I mean by Islamophobia. That it doesn't Islamophobia doesn't even allow the Spaniard authorities to. It doesn't even occur to them that, hey, we've committed a genocide that is every bit as bad as the Holocaust. And we did this to human beings. It doesn't occur to them. Talk to the French about what they did in Algeria. I mean, and we can go on and on and on. Europe, Europe in the colonial age, the most conservative estimate of the number of people that Europe killed in Africa, in colonizing Africa, the most conservative estimate is 15 million people. How many of us, when we think about how horrible the Holocaust is, think about, oh, but wait, there's also another horrible event. 15 million Black people were wiped off the face of the earth so Europe can build colonies in Africa. It's all about human consciousness and what humans believe that they know what they know because they're free thinkers. They don't realize that often what they know because of cultural influences, and that free thinking is very hard and takes a lot of work, a lot of very hard work to become a free thinker.
Thank you for this answer. I want to return to Islamophobia and white triumphalism later with a question. Grace, I have a question for you, but do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. Just checking. So I want to go to a question that somebody asked for you, Grace. Thank you, Grace, for your steadfastness standing by the Sheikh's side. In the documentary, you brought life, and your commitment to preserving the Sheikh's work is something I pray that God will forever reward you for. I found your love of rescue dogs hilarious and extremely heartwarming. How do you manage fear? What has been your journey with courage and strengthening your faith in Allah? You and your family live so openly despite the threats. Thank you so much for your work, and I pray Almighty Allah blesses you immensely. And I just want to piggyback on this question. So, one can easily imagine a wide-eyed convert coming from a completely different cultural context, entering the faith very timidly. You know, mom says don the hijab, and you change your name, you do all the things other people tell you important that are important, but clearly that wasn't you. You held on to your conviction that Islam has to make sense to you, that your rationality is part of the equation. So I want to also ask, like, where does that strength come from, both then and now?
Thank you. That's a very, very nice complimentary question. Um, I think that when I think about my convert experience, um, I've talked a lot about my upbringing. My parents were Taiwanese immigrants, and they came here, chasing the American dream, like so many immigrants did. And they really taught me from the time I was young, a very strong admiration and desire to assimilate into white culture, and the ultimate was to achieve white privilege. And so that was really, like uh, my compass for so long. And when you ingest that and you follow that particular path, I mean, you know that it's soulless, right? It's like the underlying message is we're here just to maximize, it's capitalist. It's just maximizing everything, whether you get a great job, whether you marry a white person or, whatever. We all know what that success model is. And so I think that I was, by the time I hit college, it was a really dark place. And it was like, this doesn't make, this is not, there's got to be more than that. And and definitely it came to a head when I got to business school, and everyone around me was like that, or at least I perceived that. And so I think that's when I really embarked on this faith journey, and was searching for something that made sense and that was clean and that was, that gave me meaning. I mean, there's also, a history of trauma in, my upbringing as well. And I think now as an adult, I realize everyone, especially Muslims, have trauma in their history, which has to be dealt with, in order to arrive at a much healthier place. But at that early time, when I converted, my parents had a very vicious reaction, to my conversion. It was quite extreme, and it's a crazy story. I mean, they really thought that I was joining a cult and that I was marrying a terrorist, and they felt it was within their right to save me. And so things got pretty bad. But I think because at that stage, the one thing, it's like at that stage I was really, I mean, I started out lost. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I wanted something better. But at the foundation was this feeling like, okay, the one thing I do know is I believe in God, if nothing else, right? That's my starting point, and that's my anchor. And so it started out where, like, okay, I was at business school, and then I had a couple of Muslim classmates, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe the problem is that religion has not been in my life. And so, I started on this journey, went out and checked a book, out from the library about Islam, and started to read it, and it really resonated with me. But it was like, but how could I be a Muslim? Like, that's just so weird. Like, but I knew that I believed in God. I knew I wasn't a Jew. I knew I wasn't a Christian, because the whole Trinity thing didn't make sense to me. And I'm like, okay, but that means I'm Muslim, and that just seems so impossible. And it would take like 2.5 years for me to kind of, learn enough and connect, I think, enough with God to undo that. And so when I had that really horrible experience with my family and how they reacted, it really pushed me to. And at that time, I mean, I was really like, I think Sheikh and I had just gotten married too. It really was like, okay, I have God, and that's it. And that's okay. Like, I'm sorry, to my parents that you don't like what I've chosen, but I'm not going back. I know what life was like before me, before I found God, before I found Islam. I know in my heart this is the truth. I believe in, the hereafter. I understand the meaning of life, and I'm sorry that you don't like it, but I'm not going back. And so I think that gives you a sense of courage when you lose everything. Like, I cut off all of my friends. I didn't have my family. For 8 years I didn't talk to my family, and it was me and Sheikh. And and thank God, like, everything that I learned from Sheikh was so nourishing and so healing, and so, like, we often say that I was re-raised through, the values and the principles that, that I learned, through what we now teach at Usuli. This was really what reformed me, as a human being, as a soul. Um, and so, and I think we all at some level connect with the revolutionary message of Islam. It's you are, it's part of the resistance, right? You're holding on to truth, and you are searching for something meaningful. You are trying to, aspire to something better. And and I think that when you understand that, and you understand, even learning, like, in our own tradition, many of the people who were truth tellers, in their time were really marginalized. They were really vilified. Even, the prophet, peace be upon him, right? Like all of this stuff, it just becomes part of your understanding of how things are. And if you believe that you stand for truth and beauty and what's right, that is its own conviction that can carry you through so much. Your connection with God. And there are many times where I felt like the only one who understood what I was going through and feeling and all my pain was God. And I didn't have to explain anything because God knew what was in my heart. Even the times when if Sheikh and I were fighting, right, and I had no friends, no family, it's like, okay, it's just me and God. I can complain to God, and I think that that's a real blessing, because it makes you feel like you're never alone. And that's why I think, oftentimes, like if you listen to, a lot of my talks and whatever, I really believe that, when you build that relationship with God, then that's all you really need, and on the final day, it's just us and God, right? So you have to, like, what's more important than building that relationship? And that becomes your guiding compass on everything. So the courage or the bravery or, the conviction, it all comes from the same place, and feeling like, yeah, I'll, like in my prayers, it's like, I just want to be with you, God. That's all I want. And so guide me and help me figure it out. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that answered everything, but
Yeah, that's beautifully said and makes me embarrassed for all the times I've been worried about what other people have to say about XYZ. And it makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Tina, I want to ask about, can you talk about meeting Grace and Sheikh for the first time and, the experience of seeing the library and hearing the dogs and the classical music? What were your first impressions? We're all friends here. What was your first impression and how did your relationship evolve over time?
Well, I remember going to their they before they moved to Ohio, they lived here in Los Angeles where I live now. And I remember going to the place of the library. And Guido and I had just come from Baltimore where we had interviewed another Muslim man. I forget what sect.
the
But
Muslim
anyway,
Marine, I think he was like an Ahmadi.
right. Anyway, so we were coming off of that experience, and I thought, okay, well, I we were reading about the professor's work, Search for Beauty in Islam, and a beautiful book, and we were looking forward to interviewing him. But I was thinking, well, this is an interesting story, Islamophobia, but it's being covered, in a way in the news, and I'm not sure this is a bigger story. Um, and so we went, and I remember Grace answered the door, and I went, "Who is she?" I remember thinking, I wonder how she fits into all of this. Um, and then we went into the house, and the professor was upstairs still. It was a two-story house, and she brought us through the library, and I was just taken with all these books and all this knowledge. And I thought, well, who are these people? And for me, it's like I didn't know anything. And so I approached this as like, oh my goodness, these are really interesting subjects. And it was through that, I started to challenge all my own assumptions about what I thought I knew when I knew nothing, and but anyway, that's the first experience. It was like, oh wow, we want to come back. Can we film you again? We were like, we were always like begging to be around them and to film and to set up in the house and to, we professor's not making a joke. We basically lived with them for, a couple of years or at least a year. But that was my experience. I didn't know what to expect. I was brought into this world, over time we trusted each other. And I was just so curious, I've never been I've never encountered like a place of knowledge and books and so it was interesting, fun. As a filmmaker, for me, first and foremost, I didn't have an agenda. So, I was like looking at them as subjects. And through it became this amazing journey.
I'm curious. Were there any things that came up or revelations during the filming that surprised you that you didn't, perhaps you didn't know about them, or that things that happened during the filming?
Oh gosh, probably so many things. I mean, I had so little knowledge of Islam, and how vast it is. And I think to understand that it's not like just one thing. And um, so that was huge. And it's about conviction and Grace's story. Um, I don't know, there's just so many things.
Yeah. Sheikh, I have a question for you. The assassination of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi is so important thematically to the film, I think, and it's something you were extremely vocal about both in the film but also in khutbahs. Given the horrific violence of the act of the murder and the impunity, and the fact that the Saudi government has made three attempts on your life, it's quite remarkable to me that it seemed to make you extremely angry but not scared. You didn't seem scared at all, and it made me think of the utility of anger versus the quieting effect of fear. Because in general, many of your khutbahs do reach kind of a crescendo of frustration and anger. So can you talk about anger from a spiritual and personal perspective?
It's an interesting question. I mean, um, um, I don't, when I am, um, in my daily life, um, I often do things that have nothing to do with anger. Um, Worship, um, and this is part of what we invited Tina and Guido to sort of experience with us. Classical music, a connoisseur of classical music, sort of obsessed with, uh, um, a connoisseur of not just Western classical music, but also Kulthum, for instance, who I just, um, yeah, I'm sort of obsessed with and have been pretty much all my life. Um, I read a lot of literature. I'm obsessed with literature. Um, I read novels uh, that are very humanistic and have nothing to do with the when I stand on the pulpit or when I write Islamic Islamic related topics, whether they're related to Islamic law, Islamic ethics, or even stand on the pulpit to deliver a khutbah. It's very interesting because the it's not anger that comes from a frustrated heart. It is anger that comes from a frustrated intellect. Um, i- when you study the causes of malady and you see the causes of malady, so for instance, if you know that there are a people that keep drinking from a contaminated river, and you keep telling them that this river is contaminated and that this is the reason that your children are sick and that your family is sick and your relatives are sick, and they keep coming back and drinking from that contaminated river, it is an intellectual frustration because the causes for the illness are so obvious to you, and the solution is so obvious to you. And that is often what um uh, and it's so it is not anger. It is it's uh, an nearly an intellectual verdict that warrants anger. I mean, if you don't get frustrated at people who could keep doing something that is so obviously wrong and do it again and again, there is an intellectual betrayal there. Um, but and part of it, and I think this is not just was a lot of um, I find this was people that I respect in the Islamic field generally. You know, Allah repeats in the Quran so many times that this life is not it, and the hereafter is everything, uh, or much better than this life. Uh, the Prophet ﷺ also repeats the same. And either you believe it or you don't. And if you really believe it, if you genuinely believe it, then it is very difficult to get worked up about the affairs of this world. I mean, you sort of engage the affairs of this world at an intellectual level, but you accept all the possibilities as fair game. And you don't, you're not really in a the most fundamental way. And because I remember, like, I would have these discussions with Guido, especially. Um, he was very surprised uh, that I could stand on the pulpit and speak a certain way or write a certain way, but at the same time I was a connoisseur of horror movies, and we bonded a great deal over horror movies. He knew a great deal about horror movies. I knew a great deal about horror movies. I watched horror movies all the time. He watched horror movies. He was fascinated about the paranormal, which I knew a great deal about. And so he would ask me all these questions about the paranormal. He had sort of a very intense curiosity about it. And and I think all of it contributed to this layering process of that. To be a Muslim scholar, it didn't mean that you had to be boring. It didn't mean that you had to be sort of weird. But at the same time, we had many conversations about why I didn't react very strongly to the possibility of dying, um, um, and sort of just, um, yeah, I think what Guido um, had a way of phrasing things, but I mean, he was always asking about the element of fear and how much fear is a part of my life, and I'm very comfortable saying that fear isn't. It just isn't a part of my life. Truly, it's sort of like, well, whatever God brings is okay. It's good.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to go to a question that we received. Um, this one I think is more for Grace. The hijab is often a topic that divides Muslims with a huge lack of serious discussions around the subject in the Muslim community. The four-part halaqah on the hijab on SoundCloud is truly amazing, but it's on SoundCloud, not available to all, with the sound quality that's not that great. Are there any plans to release an updated version of the subject on YouTube? English is not my first language, and on YouTube we can put on auto subtitles. Or are there any plans from the Usuli Institute to write a book on the hijab issue?
Yeah, great question. Hijab is the thing that keeps coming up with me. Um, yeah, we recorded those hijab tapes in 1996. So this was right after Sheikh and I got married, and we were in Austin, Texas, and it was a really big issue back then. So the students, he was teaching a class on the Quran, and the students, were really bothered by this issue of hijab. And so he said, okay, let's hold a halakha, and I'm going to present all of the evidence and the issues. And, I'm not going to tell you what my position is. The point is that you can weigh all the evidence yourself and come to your own conclusion. And so we had like 4 audio cassette tapes worth, and it was absolute gold. And like so much, I mean, I should say, kind of also back to the original question you asked me about, preserving and, all of that. It, his, Sheikh's scholarship was so precious and so instrumental in my own like understanding and awakening. I mean, I met him from the day that I met him, and I had a chance. Well, even before that, I tell the story that I was listening to his audio cassette tapes on Islamic women jurists, or in Muslim history, and that you can find actually also on the SoundCloud. That was recorded in 1994. Someone had sent those to me, and that's how I first became aware of Sheikh and listened to him and got in contact with him. But everything that I heard from Sheikh was so life transforming, and it's the same dynamic where you hear people say it's like fresh air to a suffocating person, or it's like fresh water to someone who's drowning. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like you feel like you're having an awakening. So from the beginning, from the moment I met him, I just felt this intense need to like record everything out of his mouth, because I felt it was so significant and it was so unusual, and so precious. It's like you speak, and if no one captures it, it's gone. No one's going to remember it. And so I felt this immense duty to capture that. So the hijab lectures are very much like that, and people hear it and they complain because it's it's an audio cassette tape, right, from 1996. And so we were happy to digitize it, and make it available. And yeah, it's hard to hear, but the stuff is golden. And I guess the good news is that we felt like it was a really important set of halakas, because it's not really just about hijab, but it's about so much more. And so Joe Linhoff, our editor in chief of Usuli Press, took the you know took on the job of taking that text, or taking that recording, and turning it into a text, very much like what we do with the Prophet's Pulpit and with the tafsir. It's like taking spoken word and turning it into a book. So we actually do have uh, that manuscript in very good form, but we didn't want it to be the first book out of the gate, because Usuli Press was an unknown thing, and of course you roll out the here hijab. You really want people to just completely disown you. It's already bad enough, like they come after me for not wearing a hijab and for all the things that I say. And so we thought the Prophet's Pulpit would be the best first book out the gate. And then, then volume 2, then volume 3, and then of course, then Palestine sermons. And so it's still there, but now Joe is fully entrenched in the tafsir, which we're pushing really hard to try and get the first volume out, which I think will also be really life transforming. So, not to avoid the question, but we've got it in our pocket. It's not complete. Sheikh also had written a book, The Authoritative and Authoritarian in Islamic Discourses, very early on. It's like, this orange covered, flimsy thing in its first volume, and it took a couple of other, iterations. But there's a footnote in it that had a reference to hijab that was very controversial at the time, and Sheikh wanted to take that and build upon it with what he had said, and add it to an updated version of And God Knows the Soldiers, which is a really stunning book, which very quietly makes its rounds, but people don't necessarily know about. But if you haven't read it, it's amazing. Um, so we have I mean, it's like we have it there. I intend to make sure it comes out through Usuli Press. It just needs a little bit of fine tuning and stuff. So it is in the pipeline. So I guess that's the best way to say it.
Can
Um,
can
Go for it.
I make a pitch here? This is a pitch for history. I mean, it's not because you know, as people, I'm sure. How many people, by the way, are? I can't see how many people are on.
There are 32
32.
participants.
Okay, well, so it's worth making a pitch. But you know, as people might have heard me repeatedly, uh, a huge part of our plight as modern Muslims is the plight in the quality of scholarship. And you know, it's exactly like the problem of people drinking from the dirty stream. You know, eh, we could go to very convoluted explanations as to why people keep getting sick when the answer is very straightforward. It's very simple. The reason we suffer from such poor scholarship is because uh, scholarship is like growing seeds. If you nurture your seeds, if you take care of your seeds, if you invest in your seeds, they grow into plants. Scholarship is the same way. Um, and the biggest thing, so this is the actual pitch. There are so many projects that I dream of completing, bringing to fruition. You know, Joe, God bless him, is working on the tafsir. It will need my review, which will take a considerable amount of time, and then I'll also contribute to. There is a plan for a new edition of And God Knows the Soldiers. There is now a plan for a new edition of Reasoning with God. There might, you know, a plan for a monograph on the hijab. Like if I focus my attention on that monograph, that draft that Grace has, that could be accomplished. And it actually would probably be a better text if I focused on it, uh, rather than uh, it going through an editor or something like that. There is a plan for an entirely new text reconceptualizing the basis of ethics in Sharia, or arguing that there is a periodization of Sharia, and that Sharia has gone from an actual legal system resolving actual disputes in society to more like a legal system that regulates morality, and that you can't have that type of shift without the nature of the legal system itself changing, and that the moral objectives of Sharia, in my opinion, are very clear. And it's a very different matter and a very different field than maqasid Sharia, the sort of traditional classical argument about the purposes of Sharia. I think that anyway. So, and all of these would have potentially revolutionary impacts. I can tell you that the biggest thing as a scholar that you need is assistance. Your productivity goes way up the roof if you have the the resources. When in academia, my most productive times was when the law school allowed me to hire several RAs, and I had a number of RAs working for me. And when you have a number of RAs working for you, you're able to get, you know, books out, articles out. You're able to do so much more. No one can understand this except the scholar. I mean, people on the outside think that you just go to your den and you just sit somewhere and then magically a book comes out or magically an article comes out. It's not like that. It's the gritty, time-consuming dynamics of research and thinking and even the a point that you cover in halaqah in 5 minutes could have taken you 6 months of research. Um, my my complaint to Allah on the final day against my fellow Muslims will be, Allah, you gave me the intellect, you gave me the ability, you gave me the learning, but Muslims did not give me the help I need to fully do what I believe you had put me on this earth to do. Um, no, I can't let them off the hook. I can't, because it's failing the Islamic civilization itself. It's not personal. It's it's the mess that we continue. I don't think people realize that the library that Tina and Guido saw. Well, you have a lot of books behind you, so you might know. But uh, there is no way you can acquire so many books because you read so much without it having a devastating effect on your finances. Uh, it just there's no way. You know, there's a book that was just. I mean, this is typical, by the way, my friends. Uh, because Muslims don't read, books on Islamic topics are very expensive. So there's a book that just came out on stoning in Islamic law, written by a former student of mine. It's $124. And that's just one book by Oxford Press. Um, so it's not not even literature. If you want to read a book as soon as it's published, you might pay $30 a book. But when you are talking about academic books, you are talking about a very different realm of and you cannot, most of my life I had to live in the days that I lived at uh, Yale and Princeton. I had the advantage of living close to a spectacular university library. So you were constantly in the library at school, because they get but books have become, and especially with Islam, like places like UCLA, this is you find amongst state schools all the time. They have to make choices as to what they buy and don't buy, and guess what they decide to cut out. Are they going to cut out books on Judaism or the Jewish tradition? Are they going to cut out books on Christianity? Are they going to cut out on publications in the field of philosophy? No, they don't. They cut out Islamic studies, uh, because Muslims don't have a lot of power. They don't have awareness. They don't complain. They don't make noise. They don't say that that's unfair. How dare you? And so, you know, anyway, so that's my plug.
Yeah, the what we're breaking exclusives here. I'm what great possibility, inshallah, we can get it together and make these provide Usuli with the resources to get these projects executed, inshallah. Um a great series of exclusives and then an indictment at the end. Um
Ahsan, there's another thing, but this is a plug just that, keep in mind for some future date that this library I have accumulated on Islamic law, which includes 300 manuscripts and has to survive. When I leave this earth, this library has to survive. It cannot be allowed to meet the fate that the Islamic libraries of so many scholars this is part of the reason that I'm so happy about this documentary is that it actually documents the existence of this library. Uh, but so many Muslim scholars have passed away and their libraries were obliterated after their death. So many. I can tell you stories that will make you cry. And very prominent people. And when, and if I tell you stories to compare between, so that you can compare what happens to the scholars of famous Catholics or famous Protestant scholars or even Mormon scholars or Jewish scholars, and it it is, I mean, I could easily write a book, but it would sound so whiny because it would, basically tell, like, okay, look at all these people, they've got their act together, and Muslims just keep having, one loser case after another. But it must be done. I think it will be a crime against history.
Yeah. Yes. I want to, so it's 5:15. So I want to explain really fast the next steps for this film. That moment or that section of the film that talks about the library, was incredibly beautiful and romantic to me. I want to quickly talk about those next steps, and then we'll do rapid fire. A bunch of questions did come in the comments, so I want to honor those. So what's happening with the film? So this film has had a Film Pact, which is a impact campaign company, is developing an impact campaign, or has developed an impact campaign such that the lessons and themes of the film will live beyond the 92 minutes of the runtime, and turn into concrete, tangible change. One goal is introducing more Muslims and folks to the Usuli Institute. A second goal is reaching non-Muslim faith groups to support their interfaith work and deepen its work and the programs that they already have that are tackling Islamophobia within their own communities. A third goal is reaching activist groups who can use this film to support conversations on fighting authoritarianism. We know you care about this as much as we do, and you can help in two ways. So one is screenings. The goal of the Impact Campaign is to book 200 community screenings, just like this one in 2026. And you can help us reach that goal by organizing your own in-person or virtual screening, or introduce this film to nonprofits and Islamic centers, activist groups, and other communities who might be able to host a screening. They're very easy to book on Kinema. There are extremely affordable options, including ticket splits that require zero money to host. We just split your ticket shares. So screenings is one way. The second way is to donate to the Impact Campaign. Your ticket purchase has already gone straight to the campaign. We've raised $850. Every ticket from this week will be helping us to pay for our first key screening, co-sponsored by CARE Los Angeles later this spring. A screening meaning it's a way to get press, get change makers in the room, donors tuned into the film, inshallah. But we have so much more that we want to accomplish, including more key screenings, expansive outreach to our target audience groups, and your donation, large or small, can help us get beyond that first key screening. And Sarah is going to put both the screening link and donate links in the chat. And we'll also email it tonight. And we do need to clarify that this fundraiser is separate from any donation to the Usuli Institute, because the film is an independent project. But we obviously have close, shared goals, and we hope you see the importance of it as we do. So now I want to get into these rapid fire questions here. Let's see. Okay, so I don't know how these are gonna be rapid fire, but let's do our best here. So just first, what prompted you to leave LA for Ohio? Is there any type of catalog system for the library? And related to that, what's the plan are there plans for preserving the library?
I can answer some of those. Is there a plan yet? No, but we have it. We have certain priorities that we want to address, and so I'm speaking organizationally from a Suli point of view. And we really want, if we want to build a campaign and do it right. So this is not something that you do lightly, but you do your due diligence to figure out what is the right plan, and what are the steps to go about doing that. We've had several people reach out to help. This is a priority, but not an immediate priority. And we have like 4 people that Usuli, managing our day to day. But this is one of the long term projects that we want to take on very seriously, so that when we launch it, we can speak to, like all of the thinking that has gone on behind it, exactly what we want to try and achieve, what we need to raise, what the plan is. So basically, we want to do it right. And that work has not been done yet. So, but we intend to have, a plan that people can get excited about, jump on board with, because I think that when you see in the library, you see the importance of preserving this. Um, the question about, sorry, what was the question about? Why did we come to Ohio?
Yeah,
That
yeah. Can you talk
I
a little
think,
bit about that?
um,
There, there,
well,
there is
go
no
ahead. Did you want to
catalog.
say something?
No, no, there is no catalog.
And there is no catalog,
Yeah, there
right?
is
So
no
that is part of
catalog.
the
Only,
plan.
the only one who knows what this library holds is right now is me. Uh,
Yeah, and it's a big project to catalog. It requires a lot of
it,
resources,
it's
money
number
and people.
the numbers of the volume. Do you remember the how many volumes the library is?
It's over 100,000
Yeah.
that we know. So yeah, it's a big job. um, and I mean, the short answer of why we moved here is we planned and Allah planned. We moved here in the middle of winter, in the middle of a pandemic. Um, there were a lot of different reasons, and it was kind of one of those. It was a hijra moment, honestly. There were a lot of things happening, and I remember as we were going through it, because some of the folks here, like Cheyenne, was there, with us, and Sharif and all that. I mean, a lot of what kicked it off, was certainly the condition of the books in the library. We felt like where it was in Los Angeles, things were deteriorating, and so we were very concerned about that. And at that point, we lived in 2 different houses, so it was also very difficult for Sheikh to be separated from the books. And, with the pandemic, I think everyone's idea about the world was challenged. What's going to happen? How long are we all here on this planet for? We could die at any time. It's just like one of those existential moments. And it made us think about, okay, what are we going to do with this library? I can't, and where, in Los Angeles, it's impossible to afford a place big enough, to house, us in the library and all of that. And so, we wanted to be closer to family.
Yeah.
That was definitely an important part of the pandemic impact.
Please, can I just add the clarification that because it's implied, we had a house for the books and we lived in a separate house,
Hmm.
and and that was really hard.
Yeah,
Living in a separate house from the books was torture. Uh, and the house that was for the books was busting at the seams, which meant that some books were getting hurt, which was destroyed me to see books in conditions where they get hurt. So, and there's just no hope. Excuse me, no hope of having any type of abode in LA that's big enough for us and the books. And so,
yeah. So we had friends in Ohio, and they said, "Oh, you should think about moving to Ohio." Um, you know, it it's just, and we thought, okay, yeah, maybe in a couple of years when Mito finishes school, maybe, when the professor's ready to retire. So I made the mistake that night of jumping onto Zillow and going, what can you get in Ohio? Zillow is very dangerous. Don't jump on Zillow. If for people who don't know, it's a home app. You can start seeing what you can buy. And I found this incredible 14,000 square foot house, and I was like, oh, this would solve the problem. And so it became well, is this possible? Could we even do this? Well, a little bit of due diligence was like too dangerous. It was like, oh my God, we can do this. What about this? Can we do that? Oh my God, we can do that. Okay, well, if we're going to try this thing, if God really wants us to do it, this is going to work. And it works. And you're like, oh my God, are we really, And one thing, and we had probably like, 50 of those things. And so it was truly like one of these, and then we were meanwhile trying to raise money for the Project Illumin Tafsir project because we were trying to raise enough money to focus on the Quran for a year and invite students to apply. And so people had applied, and we had a moment to be like, should we do this in Ohio? Should we do this in Los Angeles? That factored in a little bit too. So yeah, when all was said and done, we it took 2 months to pack up the library. Cheyenne can attest to that. Almost killed him. And Sharif, we have like incredible stories. That's like actually that should be your next documentary, Tina. There was enough there. And then it took five like 52-foot trucks to drive across country. Those really full-size trucks. And so as soon as it was loaded on, it started driving across country. And then Cheyenne and Sharif and flew to the other end to receive them. And meanwhile, we had to pack up. We had 8 dogs and 4 people shoved into an RV and trying to drive from LA to Ohio in the middle of winter. And as we're driving there, we've got the laptop going and we see January 6th insurrection happening. And we're like, as we're driving past Trump signs and huge crosses. And I mean, it's just like the whole thing was like a really incredible movie. And of course, everyone's like, why are you moving from California to Ohio? But I think once it happened, I mean, it was hard, but it made a lot of sense once we got here. It took 10 days to drive across country because of the dogs and everything. And we arrived and we immediately jumped into this very intensive Project Illumin Tafsir where we were doing halakas twice a week and all of that. So uh, it's just part of the adventure of life, it's just like one long test. But it was, now we can laugh about it. At the time, it was kind of, yeah, it was a good test.
So I'm being told we have we have time for one more question,
Oh
and
no.
it is, sorry, 4 minutes. Four
Ah,
minutes.
okay,
It
then
is
don't
not
ask
really
Shay.
it's not a rapid fire question, so do your best. Ya Sheikh, given that there is a deep need to rebuild an Islamic civilization that has a sense of dignity and autonomy, what do you see as the building blocks that can serve as the foundation for such a civilization? So much has changed since the deterioration of our civilization, and even when it was around, it had its problems. To what extent must we build something new, and to what extent should we seek to revive old institutions, for instance, the Aquaf?
No call.
Uh, yeah.
Uh, okay, since we have I mean, obviously this you could talk for a very long time about this, but listen, the Awqaf played a critical role in the emergence of the Islamic civilization. Why? Because they were private endowments, and anything that is controlled by governments does not bear fruit. Governments have, while they are very powerful sources of things, but they also have an immense corrupting influence. Governments tend to become an organism of their own that serves their own needs. It becomes an organism that needs to live. And in order to live, it needs to feed. And in order to feed, it will often feed on the very people that it needs to serve. The Alqav took us out of this paradigm because it said it's basically the building of a civic society, a healthy civic society. So, but let me put the thing that Islam imbued and instilled in its followers. When I look at the earliest generations of Muslims, and I ask myself, what was the thing that made that civilization sprout and start flourishing? And the answer always, in one form or another, comes back the love of learning. what Islam it came to these desert people who were, most of them were even illiterate. It first told them it's really important to become literate, which people ignore what a profound achievement that was. These people didn't read and write, didn't even bother to write their poetry or write their history. If you would have gone to an Arab in Mecca at the time, and they had no books of history, none. They had no books of philosophy. They didn't care. They weren't like even the Sassanids, the Persians, or the Byzantines, who at least had some books of history or at least wrote some theology. These people were zero, nothing. It was all like just living the moment. And Islam came and said, in order to be human beings, you need to be literate. And Islam came and said, in order to be true Muslims, you have to love learning and you have to be obsessed with learning. And it's not the battles, it's not the, there were many political intrigues, there were many, this is what unfortunately Muslims focus on when they write their history: who ruled where and who killed who and who assassinated who. I mean, that's all nonsense. That's not what the civilization was about. The civilization was about the institutions of learning, the civic society that was built and created. And that's what spurred the entire civilization. And I don't think we have a hope as Muslims. So we admire what it takes to, there's a reason that we tell our kids go study engineering and computer science and so on. That's not the type of learning that builds civilization. The type of learning that builds civilizations is humanism. It's humanistic sciences. So in a nutshell, uh, that and that's why I keep going back to what extent do we encourage learning? I mean, I keep time and time again, I keep hearing, oh, uh, there's this effort, and we built this institute or we built this organization, and then the minute I start looking at the people involved, what their qualifications are, the type of epistemology that they're charged with teaching or learning, I realize that it's wasted money because it is ghettoized learning. It's a type of learning where you learn the things you already know. That's not learning. If you basically just want to know what you already know, uh, that's a form of egoism.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on because I think that this film is such a testament to that spirit of learning and knowledge and beauty through that. And I want to let the other folks know who submitted questions in the comments. We will try. We'll get those questions to Grace, and we'll see what can happen with future newsletters or something like that. We'll make a pitch. But I apologize. It's my fault for organizing the questions, not getting to all of them. But inshallah, we'll hopefully get answers for you. Also, I want to say that we're going to be sending out a post-screening survey to get feedback on the film. We've seen some of the comments, but it's really important to fill those surveys out so we have a better sense of what the feedback has been. And with that, I want to thank Tina, Grace, the Sheikh, so much for your beautiful answers and the beautiful film. And I also want to thank everybody for being on this call. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time and such an honor for me. Anything else?
Can I
Um,
actually? I would like to say something if that's okay. Well, first, I mean, it would be great. With these conversations will continue. So if anyone would like to join us on our YouTube monthly Q&A, it's very similar to this vibe where you come and you get to ask any question. But I really want to honor Tina because, try to imagine watching this film. You know absolutely nothing about Islam, the history, the dynamics, the people, the personalities. Think about all you would have to master to be able to put together a film like this that can convey to you this, what's happening the history of Wahhabism, these people and what they do, and understanding the arguments around colonialism and democracy, and all of this stuff. There's just it just takes an absolute brilliant person, creative person, to take it all in. And and they were working so hard for, I mean, if you can imagine, Tina actually transcribed every single conversation we had over the course of like a year and a half. So she had it in writing and knew it and could work with it, to create the script. And then, the story too, that we lost Guido partway through, which was devastating for all of us, because Guido was just such a force and such a beautiful soul, and really drove, just the curiosity. He was a really special person. And, and then the fact that the life of this movie, we started filming in like 2000 and I don't know, 16 or 17 or something like that. So it took almost 10 years to come out, before we, because Usuli started in 2000, at the end of 2017. So, and that's when we finished all the filming before we started Usuli Institute. So it just, I mean, just to say how much love and effort and time and energy and blood and sweat went into this project, and how important it is, and the timing of it. Because who thought that when we did it, Trump was in for the first time. When Trump went out, we thought, well, that really changes the whole feeling of the movie. What are we going to do with Trump in it? And sure enough, he comes back. God, God forbid, for whatever reason. But it made the movie also that much, more relevant. And it's so interesting because it's even more prescient, more, telling now. So, everything has its time. But I really want to just honor, Tina, and everything that it took, for her when she started this project.
Yeah, can I
Thank you.
add this? I've um I mean, Tina's amazing. But I used to just be in, I don't know, shock and awe. Yeah, in awe. Because Tina would live with us, and live with me, especially. She would transcribe these long conversations I would have with Guido. And every time I would see her, she would say, every time, I'd say, "Oh, I was just with you, listening to you on blah, blah, blah," and transcribing, to the point that I started thinking I should give her an honorary just, a license certificate, because she became the only, I mean, a specialist in everything I've taught. I said she attended every halaqah, transcribed every halaqah. I even attended law school classes, transcribed whatever I said, just transcribe. And that type of commitment and dedication just blew my mind, just blew my mind. It does.
And she's, because of all the editing, like every time I talk to her, she would be like, "Oh, I just was watching you. I was just with you. I see you every day." She like lived with us after 10 years after the fact. So, alhamdulillah. I mean,
Well,
thank
it was an
God.
honor. So
I honestly
Oh,
the
thank you,
respect
Tina.
is so mutual. So
Yeah, no, we love you so much, Tina. And
yeah, I love you both.
thank you,
Yeah, I
everybody.
hope the film, I'm really curious about all the comments and the feedback and, getting the film out there. So thank you all for being here today.
Yeah, please do let Tina know your reaction. I mean, we're all really, we're really dying to. For us, it's like, ugh, we got to look at ourselves. But for Tina, it's like we really want to know how the movie landed with you. So anything you can share is really, really wonderful. So I hope you'll
And
take the
help
time to
spread
read
the
it.
conversation and the word. And thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. When you're breaking fast, please make dua for Palestine and Iran and all the people suffering persecution in the world.
Inshallah. Thank you guys also for brilliant job, Ahsan and Sarah. You guys, are did a fabulous and continue to do a fabulous job with Impact. So, alhamdulillah, and God bless you. So, Ramadan Mubarak, everybody. And yeah, I know we haven't had more time for live feedback. I mean, I'm willing to stay longer. I don't know. You're like, I want to stay longer. But, alhamdulillah.
Whatever you think. Grace, I
Um,
mean,
we can stay longer if anybody wants to. I mean, of course.
At a certain point, I'll be praying Maghrib, but I'm happy to be here.
And we can say for, I mean, it's up to you guys. So, did you have any other really pressing questions? Or, I mean, maybe we can turn on people. Does anyone want to share like what they thought of the movie for
Yeah,
Tina? That
let's
would be
do
really
that.
Can
Let's do
fabulous.
live
Now,
feedback.
can I ask a really quick question about the screenings, the community bookings? If it's an academic institution, are you all willing to do something kind of like this with the academic audience? So if like a university books a screening?
Yeah.
Yes, of course, yes. Sarah, or yes? I think the answer is yes.
The answer is absolutely yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hella.
Yeah, so if you when you get the feedback survey and everything and you see Sarah's name, Sarah's part of the impact campaign and she's part of the Usuli community. So she's a perfect person to direct any of those queries to. But let's open up to people who want to talk about their feedback to the film. Share your comments with Tina. Yeah, I would say let's go casual, unmute and start speaking.
Hi, Tina. I would like to thank you for the film. Um, and the question to Grace, I was wondering what happened to the dog mobile that you had for the, that you were showing.
Oh my gosh, the dogmobile. I was actually just thinking about the dogmobile. Well, we had an evil neighbor across the street, this horrible racist person. And when we left, we left the dogmobile on the street. And I mean, it's a nice street in Thousand Oaks. And he called the impound people to come tow it, and we didn't know. So it was a while before we found out, and by the time we found out, enough time had elapsed that that the cost of getting it out of impound would have been so high that I didn't really know what we would do. So I spoke to the people at impound, and I told them, listen, I can't really afford to get the car out because, it would be in California and I'd have to somehow get it to Ohio, which made no sense. So I told him, listen, I bought this car because I was trying to save animals for the wildfire. And, please, I just want, it would be really lovely if you could donate it instead of destroying it or whatever, making it parts. Donate it to one of these, animal shelter people that can help move dogs because there was still a problem of the wildfires in LA. And it's a problem when you can't move animals, right? And so the guy that I spoke to was very nice, and he said, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. So to calm my own heart, I just convinced myself that he did. Now, whether I don't know actually what happened, but I hope that that's what happened. It was a very special truck. And oh, by the way, I'm wearing the gold necklace because Victor asked me, what happened to the gold necklace? And so here it is
Oh,
that my mom gave to the professor. So I'll make a point of wearing it every time we have a Q&A.
that's so cute.
Any more comments about the film, your experience, your reaction watching it? It's very it's a very personal experience when you've been connected to the Suli community for so long to then see a film showing, the behind the scenes in a way. So I personally found it extremely moving, and I've told you before, Tina, I think it's a beautiful, I think it's so artful on top of having this incredible message. It just that there are so many beautiful artistic choices. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. From a filmmaking point of view, it's all the people that worked on it, from the composer to all of these people that help bring these things together. I had great collaborators on this, aside from my partner Guido. After he died, we went on and there was, the person that did the music, the person that did the audio, everything was so many great, talented individuals. So thank you. It wasn't just me, it was all, I had so much help.
Yeah. Yeah, every film is a huge collaboration. I know that much from being near the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that things like the animations were so beautifully done. The music was fabulous. And I watched it again last night for the first time in a while, and it took me back because it's like this is our home, right? I mean, it's like it doesn't exist anymore except in the film. So it's a little bit bittersweet, and but I also loved seeing Amito, as this little kid playing video games and seeing the dogs because most of them are past. And Luda, the white German Shepherd that was spinning, he's behind me now. He's probably going to pass away within the next few days. And
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, so it's hard. I mean, it's a reminder of, of life and the transition of life. But it's very beautiful and very meaningful. And yeah, so I hope people were touched by it.
I
Yeah.
really share in that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. You
In Asan's sentiment of just, I felt really emotional at a lot of different points, especially when the chef was talking about his experience in Egypt, and then even seeing like the home video of Sharif when he was 4. Just like being part of the Usuli community and getting to know everyone, like those little, like I don't know why that specifically, his like him as a baby like made me so emotional. So I thought that, yeah, you added some really like beautiful personal touches on top of the obvious stuff that really, it was just like, yeah, it brought like kind of what Grace was talking about, how like the professor brings the brains and she brings the personality. Like you brought a lot of like that just relatable feeling of their family into the film, and it was really beautiful.
Thank you.
I know folks are coming on either coming to break fast or approaching that. If there's one last comment to send us out, great.
Yes, maybe.
Yes, go ahead.
Um, um, for me, after watching the film, I felt deeply shaken. It was like I feel a lot of dignity. Um, it's like it unsettled my understanding of Islam, justice, and even the purpose of life. And it's like it was like an invitation to truly grow. It's not easy, but it was a very beautiful invitation that I felt.
Wow, thank you so much. That's beautifully said.
Mm.
Now I think we have a
The
sorry,
okay,
Sheikh.
that's was this? I didn't see made this comment, uh, but
Lois.
this is the to me that's the most you put your finger on exactly what I hope people will get from this,
Mm,
because I don't I don't like the bracketing of Muslims as if they are a special case.
mm,
We are human beings, just like, and in fact, one of the hardest things is that, for instance, when you write a book like The Search for Beauty in Islam, um, so much of what it says has to do with just the search for beauty by human beings, for human beings, and this entire documentary, in my view, is precisely about uh, existence. What is the meaning of life? How do
mm,
you find meaning? How do you anchor yourself in purpose and meaning?
mm,
Um, and about family, and about family under stress. Um,
mm,
and so I'm so happy to hear that that's what you got from it.
mm,
I mean, again, all the credit is to Tina, but I'm just so happy. I mean, we
mm,
just, we just did what we did. It was really, I mean, like I would joke with Tina that, oh, I learned what B-roll is, and I would say, Oh yeah, now the B-roll, right? So I'm supposed to just keep reading or just take walks or oh B-roll, B-roll. But other than that, there was no acting. It was just doing what we always do. There just not and it was the artistic vision of really Tina and Guido, and of course, and obviously after Guido passed away, uh, it so it and I that's just it's remarkable to me how you can take this raw material and tell a story from it. It's an amazing art.
And I think also it was validating for us as, doing what we were doing for so long without feeling like anyone cared or like it didn't matter. And then to have someone come in who knew nothing and who we really connected with and respected and grew to love really feel like what we were doing was important. It gave us, I think, a lot of, hope and encouragement and strength also. So, I think we all got a lot out of the whole experience.
I
So,
remember like Guido wanted some paranormal stuff in the documentary. He
oh
wanted
my God.
to take
Yeah.
Egypt.
Remember that? He
Yes,
wanted to go to Egypt.
he wanted to
Oh
go to
God.
Egypt to places where I had experiences with jinn, and he wanted to film it. And I tried to explain to him, Guido, the oh, and he wanted to go to that area in LA where the Mansons were, which are which is haunted and has very evil juju. And I told him, they're very high risk of getting possessed. And I think his artistic compulsion.
Yeah, it was like, curiosity can kill the cat, right, Guido? We don't want to lose you. So, oh my gosh, paranormal holocaust, yes. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you,
Yeah, thank
Tina.
you. It was loads of fun.
Thank
To
you,
be
everyone.
continued.
To be continued, we'll have to
Inshallah,
do
yeah.
this again.
Inshallah, to be continued.
Inshallah.
All
Thank
right,
you,
Assalamu alaikum.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Alaikum salam. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Alaikum, good night.